I saved for years to give Dad a $20,000 dream trip, but he ripped it up and humiliated me. Now when his investment failed and he needed that money, I bought myself a condo instead. I, 28F, have always been the black sheep of my family. The one who never quite measured up, according to my father's impossible standards. Growing up in a household where achievements were currency and affection was conditional was, well, let's just say it shaped me in ways I'm still unpacking in therapy. Last week was my father's 60th birthday. Despite our rocky relationship, I decided to be the bigger person. I'd been saving for years, working extra shifts at the hospital where I'm a nurse, to give him something meaningful. Something that might finally make him proud. The party was at my parents' suburban home, the same house where I'd spent my childhood walking on eggshells. My older brother was there with his perfect wife and their 2 kids. My younger sister had flown in from across the country. Everyone who mattered to my father was present, including his golf buddies and business associates. I arrived with a simple envelope. Inside was a check for $20,000 and a note explaining that this was to fund the dream fishing trip to Alaska he'd talked about for decades. I'd researched the best lodges, guides, everything. This wasn't just money, it was the experience of a lifetime I was offering him. When it came time for gifts, I handed him the envelope, my heart pounding. The room fell quiet as he opened it. I'll never forget his face, confusion, then disbelief, then contempt. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked, his voice cutting through the silence. "It's for your Alaska trip," I explained, suddenly feeling very small. "The one you've always wanted to take." He looked at the check, then at me, and started laughing. Not warm laughter. The kind that makes your blood run cold. "You think I need your money?" he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "What, you think you're successful now because you can write a check?" Before I could respond, he did something I still can't believe. He tore the check in half. Then quarters. Then eighths. The pieces fluttered to the floor while everyone watched. "I don't need handouts from you," he said. "Especially not when we all know where this money probably came from." The implication was clear. He was suggesting I'd done something improper to get the money. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'd worked double shifts for 3 years to save that amount. What hurt most wasn't his rejection. I was sadly used to that. It was how everyone else reacted. My brother snickered. My sister looked away, embarrassed for me. My mother just stared at her hands. A few of his friends actually joined in the laughter. I stood there, humiliated, as the party continued around me. No one defended me. No one pulled me aside to check if I was okay. I quietly slipped out 20 minutes later, and no one even noticed I was gone. I cried the entire drive home. Not just for the money or the gesture, but for the final death of a hope I'd carried since childhood. That someday, somehow, I could earn my father's approval. That night, I made a decision. I was done trying. Done hoping. Done allowing myself to be vulnerable to people who had proven, time and again, they didn't value me. The next morning, I called my bank and stopped payment on the check. Then I blocked my family's numbers and social media accounts. I needed space to heal. 3 days passed in blessed silence. Then came the knocking. Update 1. The knocking on my apartment door was insistent. When I checked the peephole, I saw my father standing there, looking considerably less smug than he had at his party. My brother was with him, shifting uncomfortably. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but something in me wanted this confrontation. I opened the door but remained in the doorway, blocking entry. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. My father cleared his throat. "We need to talk about the check." "Of course. Not an apology. Not concern for my feelings. The money. There's nothing to talk about," I replied. "You tore it up, remember? Made quite a show of it." "Don't be childish," my father said, his voice taking on that familiar authoritative tone that used to make me shrink. "You can write another one." My brother jumped in. "Look, Dad didn't mean anything by it. You know how he gets when he's had a few drinks. The guys were there and he just, I didn't know. I didn't know how humiliating your child could ever be justified." "Why do you suddenly want the money?" I asked. My father's expression darkened. "That's not your concern. Family helps family. That's how it works." That's when I understood. Something had happened. He needed the money now, not just for a luxury fishing trip. The timing was too coincidental. "Actually," I said, finding strength in my voice I didn't know I had, "I stopped payment on the check. And I've decided to use that money differently." My father's face reddened. "You what?" "I'm buying myself a condo. The down payment is exactly what I was going to give you." My brother stepped forward. "You can't be serious. Dad needs." "I don't care what he needs," I interrupted, surprising even myself. For once in my life, I'm prioritizing what I need. My father's mask slipped then, revealing the desperation beneath. "I lost some money on an investment. The Alaska property I was looking at, the one you apparently knew about, it's available now at a discount, but only if I act this week. I need that money." So that was it. Not a fishing trip. He was planning to buy property in Alaska. And he needed my money to do it. "No," I said simply. No, he repeated as if he'd never heard the word before. No, I'm not giving you the money. Not now, not ever. My father's face contorted with rage. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. Besides make me feel worthless my entire life. He had no answer for that. Please leave, I said. This isn't over, my father warned as I began closing the door. I just smiled and shut the door in his face. As I leaned against the closed door, I could hear them arguing in the hallway. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty or anxious about disappointing my father. I felt free. Update 2. The next 2 days brought a barrage of texts and calls from blocked numbers I knew belonged to my family. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I met with a real estate agent and started seriously looking at condos in a neighborhood I'd always loved but never thought I could afford. On the third day, my sister showed up at the hospital where I work. I was finishing my shift when I saw her waiting by the nurse's station, looking out of place in her designer clothes. 5 minutes, I told her, leading her to the empty break room. She didn't waste time. Dad's in trouble. Real trouble. I waited for her to continue. He invested in this Alaska development project months ago. It was supposed to be a sure thing, luxury cabins for tourists. But the developer took a lot of people's money, and the project stalled. Now there's a chance to buy in directly at a reduced rate, but only for original investors, and only this week. And he needs exactly $20,000? I asked skeptically. She looked down. He needs $50,000. He was going to add your gift to his savings. I laughed without humor. So he humiliated me over money he actually desperately needed? That makes it worse, not better. He's proud, she said weakly. You know how he is. Yes, I do know how he is. That's the problem. My sister's eyes welled up. If he doesn't get this money, he loses everything he invested. It's a lot more than you know. Mom's worried sick. For a moment, I felt that familiar pull. The need to fix things to earn approval, to be the good daughter. But then I remembered the torn check, the laughter, the decades of emotional neglect. I'm sorry he's in trouble, I said, and I meant it. But I'm not his safety net. Not anymore. He'll lose the house, she whispered. They'll have to start over at 60. That hit me hard. Despite everything, I didn't want my mother to suffer. But then again, she had stood by silently while my father tore up my gift. She had enabled his behavior my entire life. I have to get back to work, I said, standing up. My sister grabbed my arm. Please, just think about it. We're family. I gently removed her hand. Family doesn't treat each other the way you all treated me. Tell Dad to ask his golf buddies for help. They seemed to enjoy the show he put on at my expense. As I walked away, I felt a strange mix of guilt and resolve. I knew they would paint me as the villain in this story. The ungrateful daughter who refused to help in a time of need. But for once, I didn't care about their narrative. Update 3. A week passed. I put a deposit down on a beautiful one-bedroom condo with a balcony overlooking a park. Every time I felt a twinge of doubt about my decision, I reminded myself that this was the first truly selfish thing I'd done in my adult life, and maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Then came the family ambush. I was having coffee at my favorite cafe when my mother, father, brother, and sister all walked in together. They spotted me immediately. This was clearly planned. My first instinct was to leave, but I decided to stand my ground. This was a public place. They couldn't make a scene without embarrassing themselves. They approached my table and, without asking, pulled out chairs and sat down. We need to talk as a family, my mother said, her voice tight with tension. I set down my coffee cup. I'm listening. My father looked different, diminished somehow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been humility on anyone else. I made a mistake, he said, the words clearly difficult for him. At the party. I shouldn't have done what I did. It wasn't exactly an apology, but from him, it was unprecedented. Your father's under a lot of pressure, my mother added quickly. The investment, his health issues. Health issues. This was the first I'd heard of any health problems. My brother jumped in. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. Doctor says he's at risk for a stroke if he doesn't reduce his stress. I looked at my father, trying to see if this was another manipulation. His complexion did seem grayer than usual. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But I don't see what it has to do with me. We're asking you to reconsider, my sister said. About the money. As a loan, if that makes you feel better. I looked at each of their faces, all showing different variations of expectation. They truly believed I would give in, because I always had before. No, I said simply. My father's face flushed. No, I repeated. I'm not giving you the money. Not as a gift, not as a loan. After everything, my father started, but I cut him off. After everything you've done, you should be ashamed to even ask. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You implied I did something illegal or immoral to get that money. You laughed while tearing up a gift that represented years of my hard work and sacrifice. My voice was steady, but I could feel myself trembling inside. And none of you, I continued, looking at my mother, brother, and sister, said a word in my defense. Not one word. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled away. We're family, she said, as if those 2 words excused everything. Family respects each other, I replied. Family supports each other. Family doesn't tear each other down for sport. My father's control finally broke. You ungrateful. That's enough, I interrupted, standing up. I'm done. I've put a deposit on a condo. The rest of the money is going into my retirement fund. I suggest you figure out your financial problems without me. As I gathered my things, my brother made one last attempt. Dad could lose everything. I looked him straight in the eye. Maybe he should have thought about that before he tore up a $20,000 check. I walked out of the cafe with my head held high. Behind me, I could hear my mother crying softly and my father's harsh whispers. For the first time in my life, their emotional reactions didn't feel like my responsibility. Final update. 2 months have passed since the cafe confrontation. I moved into my condo and have been making it a home. Pictures on the walls, plants on the balcony, no walking on eggshells. It's the first place that's ever felt truly mine. I heard through a former neighbor that my parents did indeed lose their house. They've moved into a small apartment. My father apparently took a consulting job with a former competitor. A step down from his executive position, but enough to keep them afloat. Yesterday there was a knock at my door. When I looked through the peephole, I saw my father standing alone in the hallway. He looked older, more subdued. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway. Nice place, he said, looking past me into my apartment. Thank you, I replied, not inviting him in. He shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to see how you're doing. I'm doing well. A long silence stretched between us. I was wrong, he finally said, the words sounding foreign in his mouth. What I did at the party, it was unforgivable. I said nothing, waiting. I've had a lot of time to think these past months. About the kind of father I've been. The kind of man I've been. He looked down at his hands. I'm not proud of what I see. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. I'm not here to ask for money, he continued. Or forgiveness. I needed to tell you that you were right. About all of it. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, vindication, sadness, a tiny flicker of hope I wasn't sure I wanted. Thank you for saying that, I said finally. He nodded, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. This was your grandmother's. My mother's. She always said it should go to you someday. He handed me the box. Inside was a simple silver locket. I should have given it to you years ago, he said. It's not worth much in money, but it means something. I finished for him. Another silence fell between us. Would you like to come in for coffee? I asked, surprising myself. He looked up, equally surprised. I would. Yes. As I stepped aside to let him in, I knew this wasn't a fairy tale ending. One conversation couldn't undo decades of damage. We might never have the relationship I had once desperately wanted. But as we sat awkwardly in my new living room, trying to find our way through a conversation without our usual patterns, I realized something important. I no longer needed his approval to feel whole. I had found my own strength, my own voice. The $20,000 had bought me something far more valuable than I ever expected. Not just a home of my own, but the knowledge that I could stand up for myself and survive the fallout. That was worth every penny.